When you think of the Netherlands, you probably picture colorful tulips, windmills, and bicycles. But behind this picturesque image lies a surprising truth: the Netherlands is one of the most unequal countries in the world in terms of wealth distribution. It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? A country known for its strong social policies and high quality of life has a wealth concentration comparable to that of South Africa. Why? To understand, we need to explore what makes inequality such a complex and controversial issue. Have you ever wondered why discussions about wealth inequality spark such heated debates? It's a topic that divides people into two camps. Some see it as the root of all social problems, while others argue it's simply a natural outcome of a market economy. But what exactly is wealth inequality? Imagine wealth as a pie. Some people get enormous slices, while others are left with mere crumbs. The problem is that the pie doesn't grow indefinitely, so the more one person takes, the less is left for others. The world's richest people control half of all global wealth. Think about this. According to an Oxfam study, the top 1% of the world's wealthiest individuals own as much wealth as the remaining 99% combined. This means roughly 70 million people hold as much wealth as the other 7 billion. To put it into perspective, the fortune of just one of the world's richest individuals could cover the entire annual budget of a country like Madagascar. How is this possible? Wealth generates more wealth. The rich grow their money through investments, dividends, and interest. Meanwhile, the average person struggles to save or invest because most of their earnings go toward basic necessities. The gap between rich and poor is widening faster than ever before. Here's another shocking fact. Over the past decade, the number of billionaires has doubled, while the world's poorest 50% have lost about 11% of their total wealth. Just think about it: millions of people around the world work 10 to 12 hours a day, yet their incomes are shrinking. Take India, for example. In a single year, the wealth of the country's richest individuals grew by $720 billion. That's 14 times the entire national healthcare budget. And this reflects a global trend. Money keeps flowing to those who already have plenty. Statistically, inequality is measured in various ways: through income, net worth, or access to resources. One of the most widely used indicators is the Gini coefficient, which shows how evenly income or wealth is distributed within a country. But behind these dry numbers and charts are real people with vastly different access to education, housing, and healthcare. The history of inequality is closely tied to economic development. It has always existed, but globalization, financial crises, and technological advances in recent decades have made the issue even more pronounced. Every time we discuss inequality, we face a double challenge: how it impacts society and whether we can do anything about it. But here's the key question: if inequality is such a universal issue, why does it look so different across countries? Why, for example, is wealth so unequally distributed in the Netherlands, a country known for its progressive social policies? The Netherlands is often seen as a model of social justice. Everything seems nearly perfect: strong social welfare programs, affordable healthcare, paid vacations, and generous pensions. It paints an ideal picture, doesn't it? But here's the surprising reality. According to the World Bank, the Netherlands is one of the most unequal countries in the world in terms of wealth distribution. In fact, even South Africa, often considered the global leader in inequality, ranks below the Netherlands in this regard. The richest 10% of Dutch citizens control more than 60% of the nation's total wealth. Think about that: just 10% of the population essentially holds economic power over the entire country. For example, the richest woman in the Netherlands, Charlene de Carvalho Heineken, inherited a fortune worth $15 billion. That's more than the entire healthcare budgets of several small nations combined. Now consider the average citizen. According to the Dutch Statistics Bureau, more than half of young people under 35 have a negative net worth. This means their debt, student loans, mortgages, or car loans exceed all their assets. They're not just struggling, they're financially underwater. At the same time, old money and inherited wealth remain untouched for centuries. Historically, the Netherlands has been a country of early capitalists. Financial instruments such as stock exchanges and joint stock companies were first developed here in the 17th century. Many of today's wealthiest Dutch families owe their fortunes to investments made by their ancestors more than 400 years ago. Thanks to complex legal structures, much of this wealth remains largely untaxed. Take Charlene de Carvalho Heineken, for example. Her family has owned Heineken Brewery for generations. What started as a small local brewery has grown into a global brand, But the real money isn't made from selling beer. The family's wealth is concentrated in assets and investment portfolios that are protected from taxes and economic downturns. The paradox of the Netherlands becomes even more striking when compared to its neighbors Sweden, Denmark, or Norway. These countries are also known for their strong social policies, yet their wealth gap is much smaller. So what's the secret? The answer lies in history and the country's unique economic structure. But there's something else that makes the Netherlands stand out in this regard. To understand why wealth in the Netherlands is so unevenly distributed, we need to look at three key factors: economic history, lending policies, and the tax system. The Netherlands has one of the highest levels of mortgage debt in the world. This might sound surprising, but the total mortgage debt of Dutch households exceeds 700 billion euros, more than half of the country's annual GDP. What makes the Dutch lending system unique is not just its size, but how it reshapes the perception of wealth. Imagine being able to take out a mortgage not for 80 to 90% of a property's value, like in most countries, but for the full 100% or even more. Sounds appealing, right? But this comes with hidden consequences. For instance, most Dutch homeowners actually have negative net worth. Their debts exceed the value of their homes. It's a strange situation. You own property, yet you're still in the red. And this is where the tax system comes into play. Mortgage payments can be deducted from taxable income, meaning the more you pay to the bank, the less you pay in taxes. At first glance, this seems like a generous benefit. But think about it, it incentivizes debt accumulation rather than wealth building. As a result, a country with a highly developed social system faces an unexpected paradox. A population that appears wealthy on paper but, due to massive debt, is financially underwater. Now imagine how this affects inequality. Those with the means to invest can use the system as a tool to build even more wealth. Their property values rise while their taxes shrink. Meanwhile, others are trapped in a cycle of debt that only grows heavier over time. In the end, a lending system designed to make homeownership more accessible may actually be widening the gap between rich and poor. But the question remains, should this policy be seen as a failure? After all, it has allowed millions of Dutch citizens to own homes. Or is it simply the other side of the coin, where a comfortable life today comes at the cost of greater financial inequality in the future? This easy access to credit makes a large portion of the population appear poorer on paper than they actually are. Many have negative net worth, meaning their mortgage debt exceeds the value of their assets. For example, a young couple who buys a home for 300,000 euros with a mortgage of the same amount is essentially starting their financial life in the red. At the same time, the wealth of the rich continues to grow, thanks to tax loopholes. To understand why wealth in the Netherlands is so highly concentrated, we need to look at history. The Netherlands was one of the first countries to recognize that wealth could grow not just through physical labor but through financial mechanisms. In the 17th century, it became the center of global trade routes, pioneering revolutionary ideas like stock exchanges and joint stock companies. At the time, this was a game changer. Instead of owning a ship or cargo, investors could fund trade expeditions and earn a share of the profits. Those who first mastered this system built fortunes that have lasted for centuries. Families that started in the spice trade or early financial ventures not only preserved their wealth but multiplied it through investments and inheritance. And while their businesses and assets may have changed over time, the core principles remained the same. Wealth became something passed down like a family heirloom, steadily growing because time is the best ally of money. And that's not all. Unlike other countries where economic upheavals have often wiped out fortunes, the Dutch system has remained remarkably stable. Financial crises, wars, and revolutions that could have destroyed accumulated wealth never hit the Netherlands as hard. Why? Perhaps because money wasn't just invested in land or goods but in long-term financial instruments that could weather any storm. Now think about how this plays out today. Generational wealth continues to accumulate, creating an enormous gap between those who inherit fortunes and everyone else. It's like a marathon where some runners start with a huge head start while others are just lacing up their shoes. It doesn't seem fair, does it? In 2021, an investigation found that the wealthiest 1% of Dutch citizens effectively pay a lower tax rate than the middle class. How is that possible? It's due to tax deductions related to investments and real estate expenses. For example, a Dutch investor who owns multiple rental properties can report a low taxable income while simultaneously growing their wealth as property values rise. All these factors together create a vicious cycle: debt passed down through generations, historical wealth accumulation, and tax loopholes that further entrench the rich. But that's not all. If the Netherlands, with its progressive policies, struggles to solve this issue, what does that say about the global economic system? The Dutch experience is more than just a national case, it's a universal warning for any country trying to tackle wealth inequality. It shows that the complexity of the problem runs far deeper than it appears. In the Netherlands, wealth is increasingly concentrated in real estate, making home ownership harder to attain. At first glance, a high rate of home ownership seems like a success. But here's the paradox: housing is no longer just a place to live. It has become an investment tool for the wealthy. More than 20% of all real estate in the country is owned by investors who profit from renting out properties. The result: rental prices in Amsterdam, The Hague, and Rotterdam have surged by 30% in the past 5 years, making housing unaffordable for most young families. In central Amsterdam, the average rent for an apartment now reaches €1,500 per month, nearly half of the average salary. This trend deepens social inequality. The wealthy profit from rental income, while low-income residents are forced to spend more just to keep a roof over their heads. This situation is further complicated by the illusion of wealth created by pension funds, while the reality is far harsher. The Dutch pension system is considered one of the most stable in the world. But here's what's often overlooked: most of the capital in these funds is invested in international assets, real estate, and securities. These investments total over €1.7 trillion, nearly twice the country's annual GDP. However, ordinary citizens have very limited access to this wealth. Only 3% of the population fully understands where their pension savings are invested, and many retirees end up with lower pensions than expected. Worse still, when financial markets crash, future pensioners bear the risks. For example, during the 2008 crisis, many Dutch pension funds had to cut payments, leaving thousands of retirees struggling to make ends meet. These facts highlight several important lessons. Lesson 1: taxes are not a magic solution. High tax rates, even when combined with social benefits, do not guarantee equality. In the Netherlands, tax deductions for property owners have actually strengthened wealth concentration rather than redistributing it. This raises an important question: are modern tax systems truly effective in addressing wealth inequality? Lesson 2: debt and wealth are two sides of the same coin. Expanding access to credit can improve quality of life, but it also distorts the perception of wealth. When a significant portion of the population has negative net worth due to debt, official inequality statistics lose their true meaning. This calls for a new approach to measuring wealth and debt in global economic data. Lesson 3: the power of time. Wealth is not created overnight, it accumulates over generations. In countries with advanced financial systems and stable economies, this means that old money only strengthens its grip. Other nations must recognize that tackling inequality requires not just taxation, but also policies that regulate the transfer of enormous fortunes without oversight. Lesson 4: access to opportunity. Despite the shocking wealth inequality figures, most Dutch citizens still enjoy a high standard of living. This highlights the importance of ensuring basic necessities for all: education, healthcare, and housing. True fairness is not necessarily about equal wealth, but about equal opportunities. Now, let's ask the bigger question: if even the Netherlands, with its long history of progressive social policies, has failed to overcome inequality, do other countries stand a chance? Perhaps the goal should not be to eliminate the wealth gap entirely, but to find a balance where inequality does not become a threat to society. Share your thoughts in the comments.